All right, welcome back. And in this video, we're going to talk about quarters coverage, but not in particular your old style country quarters where everyone's going to be spot dropping and getting to an area. Coach, we're going to be talking about man matching and how match quarters has kind of evolved into the go-to too high safety look where you can still play somewhat zone principles, but it actually turns into man coverage later on. So let's first, before we dive into what we're going to do here, talk about match quarters a little bit and your experience with playing match quarters.
Yeah, so what I had done in the past when I was on the defensive side of the ball, we would play more of this match type deal, just more of like, because you see like a lot of like the Nick Saban stuff, I feel like, where they're playing stumpy and cone and cut and all these different terminology. I think this is like the entry level day one type install of how to play match quarters. And there's some different things you can do when you're living in that split field type world. But here in that true day one match install that you might be teaching do as your day one for a high school team or as your primary quarters coverage for like a youth middle school lower level team, we're going to be playing matching for the corner. So if one goes vertical, he's taking one going vertical. And now if that outside receiver wants to play an underneath route, like a hitch or like a drive route where he's coming underneath, the corner can continue to kind of tempo, shuffle, or pedal out, but now he's snapping his eyes to two, trying to take away two on some sort of a corner route, and now driving back down on number one late if the quarterback's eyes. So my big teaching point there for the corners was if number one is under or stops on that hitch route, we can snap our eyes going inside through the number two receiver to the quarterback trying to read the eyes. So if the quarterback does want to sit onto that number two receiver, we can look to protect the corner. Now, if he wants to flip his hips and get down onto that underneath hitch route, we can get our upfield foot in the ground and start driving down onto that hitch or the underneath route to try to compress the space in between that. Now kind of talking about the overhang, he is playing from an inside alignment, playing as that flat type player. So we are kind of giving up that initial leverage to the flat. So that is one of like the drawbacks of you being out leveraged. So if you have a guy that's a dude there who is physically has a matchup advantage, and even by losing that initial leverage, he can still get out and cover the flat. I think this is a great coverage to keep more guys kind of involved into that run fit, spilled some of your better athletes, as well as have them play to their strengths within the pass game. So if number two goes to the flat, he is going to try to work out to the flat. I think it's important to define what the flat is, whether you're talking about 7 yards vertical and then out towards the sideline, or if it's that 10 to 13 yard range, just having somewhere where you can clearly communicate to those flat players where their coverage zone passes off to. Now, if number two wants to go vertical, he will continue to cover him vertical with this match sense. So anything vertical, we want to match to going vertical. And now once he kind of gets into that, past that threshold of that first level defender, he should be looking to pass off number two to that safety over the top. And the safety can be more of that true over the top player in this version of quarters. He can be a secondary extra fit guy, but his primary responsibility in this version of quarters is to be more of that pass drop type guy.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, especially, and this is where we turn this zone coverage into a man coverage, because all the points that you just made, not one point did you say, all right, you need to run to the flats and just look for the ball. We're trying to get number two into the flats. The corner's playing number one as he goes vertical. So just being able to identify, especially to your players, where number one is, where number two is, and then obviously number three is in the backfield, again on this side, one and then two on this side. And it's being able to match up each receiver, the outside receiver and the slot receiver. To, I had a coach that always said, we want to cover players, not grass, right? The grass doesn't catch the football. And that's right. The first thing that I always think about when I think of match quarters is we're matching players. We're not just spot dropping to grass. Now, there is a point in time where you do have to spot drop to grass, and there is a place for it. But when we're talking about match quarters, we're thinking about covering men, not necessarily covering fields of grass. Now, Coach, let's talk about the free safety and the strong safety here and where our eyes need to be leverage-wise and how we're going to play the safety position.
So, yeah, I think the safety piece of it is kind of where that trying to have guys at that position that are more of your smarter football players. That's where kind of like the read component does come into place. Their initial idea is to look for two vertical. and then also like help on any sort of inside crossing route. Now, if number 2 wants to go to the flat, if you're playing this true split field deal, now we can look to get over the top to number 1. So in my opinion, this coverage and this version of it, you're mostly looking to say, okay, they really want to throw to the slot, to their tight end detached, to that true slot player who might be that Julian Edelman type, run some option routes. We want to take away that inside threat and still give help over the top to both sides. Playing this version and different modifications to a quarters coverage can really help take that away. So ideally, the safety's first priority and the first read should be number 2. If he wants to go underneath or go to the out. So if he's playing in that shallow underneath area, we can look to either help out number 1 or look for something coming across from number 2 after we get our eyes on number 1. Once again, you can put different calls in to say, okay, on this version of the coverage, we might be looking to poach number 2 coming across where that's their guy, or if they go to a 3-by-1 look, different kind of adjustments that you can make. And I think that's where in the quarters world, you have to have that trips check as to what you're going to do to this quarters coverage. So having it to where, okay, we're looking to take away this guy, we're going to poach the backside receiver or the backside safety looking to poach from the backside of this 2-by-2 look, or poach number 3, or is there single receiver there, dude? Now we can look to protect to a single receiver for that safety. You're truly playing to their isolated X in that offense. So I think you kind of have to look at it from that game plan, but from this base level out of this 2-by-2 look, looking to match 2 vertical, then helping out with number 1, potentially looking for a crosser coming back across late.
Yeah, and those lines that I just drew up, those are where necessarily the eyes need to be in order to play an effective match coverage. And we're not going to get into trips into this video because I think trips is a whole nother beast when you're playing match quarters, and there's a whole different thing. So just be sure if you don't have notifications on, be sure to put those on because we're going to come out with that video in the near future. We just want to talk about just general match coverage right now, especially if you're brand new to it, you're able to install it. Coach, we got one more position left. That's the middle linebacker here. And we're going to be looking at 3 in the backfield, but also we want to get some depth in the middle here because that's essentially where the weakness is of cover 4, correct?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple different things you can do. Obviously, if that back does want to exit the backfield, ideally you would want him pushing to the back in a true match look. I think you can also make some calls and adjustments to this coverage. Like if you want to live in a quarters world, you can make different calls to where, okay, on this down distance, we might drop that guy into more of that deep hole to protect over the middle deep. So if it's 3rd and 13, we're not worried about the back out of the backfield. We'll rally to him late. We can force that guy to drop into a middle hole, or you can do more of having it be that hybrid look to where he's dropping to wherever the quarterback's eyes are. So if he sees the back go out into the flat to the right and the quarterback takes him that way, he can look to push to the flat late and rally wherever that F or the tailback might be. Or if he wants to get his eyes over to the opposite side, so if that back releases out to the right and now the quarterback in his drop, we see him and his eyes taking us to that 2 receiver side, we can look to help there first. I think there's a couple different calls you can put into the quarters coverage. Once again, to fit the situation and fit kind of the comfort level that you have with your players on the field.
For sure. And, I want to make the point too, there's 10s, 20s different variations that you can play of match quarters here. This is just the most basic that we found and the easiest to teach that we found as well. If you play a variation, which I'm sure you do, let us know in the comment section below. We want to have this discussion open up, how we can make ultimately match quarters better and the different variations that go into it. So if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. We put out videos every single week, helping to introduce these new concepts if it's new for you. And also we're going to have some advanced concepts as well.